I just wanted to buy some eggs and bread. That's it. A normal morning, a normal shopping list, a normal Walmart near my house. But from the moment I walked in, I knew something was wrong. The doors opened with a frightening hiss, as if it wasn't a supermarket, but a disinfection chamber. And inside were the salespeople. All of them, in perfectly ironed uniforms, with plastic badges and frighteningly identical smiles. Not just polite, they smiled as if someone had put a gun to their temples and said, "Smile," or I pretended not to notice. Well, you never know. Corporate policy, smile at the customer, even if you're dead inside. But then it started. I walked past the first counter, and the speakers overhead started talking. Not music, not announcements. A voice, clear, calm, like a navigator. "Welcome to Walmart. We know who you are. We know why you came. Your death is closer than you think." I stopped. I looked up. No one reacted. The shoppers continued to push their carts as if they hadn't heard anything. One even laughed in the chip aisle. The laughter was dead, lifeless, as if the play button was stuck. I walked over to the refrigerator with eggs. Inside were not just any eggs. Each one had a face. Small, tiny, but a face. And these faces were smiling too. I dropped the box. It exploded with a soft crunch, as if the eggs had sighed with relief. The salesman came up to me immediately, tall, bald, with the same habitual smile and eyes that seemed to have tunnels in them. He leaned toward me and whispered, "Don't break them. They live until they're cooked." I backed away. The cart behind me blocked my way. A woman with empty eyes, dressed like a mannequin from last season, looked through me. There was no food in her cart, only mirrors. Small, square, and on each one a sticker. "Look inside yourself, before you disappear." I darted toward the exit. The speakers came to life again. "You have not made a purchase. We remember people like you. Your next visit may be your last." The doors did not open. I banged on the glass. The salespeople were still smiling. One waved at me slowly, as if saying goodbye forever. And then something strange happened. Everything disappeared. Sound, light, smell, emptiness. And then I was standing in the parking lot again. In my hands, a receipt. On it, buyer 1, products 0, expired. Since then, I buy everything online, even eggs, and yet sometimes a voice would come from the kitchen. "Thank you for shopping at Walmart. We'll meet again." I was almost to the door, my heart pounding as if it wanted to burst out, when I noticed a strange light on the board by the checkout. It was a number that couldn't be real. 0000. Midnight, yesterday's date. I blinked, trying to believe my eyes, but time seemed to have frozen. The hands of the clock hung in place, as if the clock had frozen in eternity. The doors in front of me suddenly slammed shut with a dull click. Not just closed, locked tight. I grabbed the handle, tugged at it, tried to push. The metal didn't give in, as if it had become part of the wall. Panic in my chest flared up like a fire. I tried to call for help, but the supermarket was dead silent, broken only by a soft rustling. From the darkness of the corridor where the rows of goods used to be, they appeared. The seller and the same ones with plastic badges in impeccable forms, but now their smiles became much more sinister. They walked slowly like hunters who know that the prey has already been caught. In each of their hands, knives gleamed, long, sharp, reflecting the dim light of the lamps. The bald man with tunnels instead of eyes approached me. His voice was cold and emotionless. "Did you think you would leave? You are a product, and now your shelf life has expired." At that moment, it seemed to me that the air around me was thickening, compressing, and every movement of the sellers was thoughtful and deadly. I felt the cold creeping under my skin, the shadows shrinking around me, forcing my heart to clench into a lump. One of them took a step forward and raised a knife. His eyes shone with a mad light. Not human. The smile grew wider, almost animalistic. I took a step back, but there was nothing behind me. No exit, only mirrors. In each reflection I saw myself, but already disfigured by fear and despair. The mirrors, like traps, seemed to want to swallow me whole. "You won't get out," the bald man said. "Velmart knows everything. You're here forever. And then I felt a sharp, cold prick, as if something sharp had cut through my skin. I jerked, screamed, but the sound disappeared into the abyss. Darkness covered me like a blanket. My pulse slowed, my breathing became intermittent, and then a sharp change of frames. I opened my eyes and found myself back in the parking lot at the exit of the store. I had a receipt in my hands. I looked at it. Buyer, 1. Products, 0. Expired. But now I knew the truth. Velmart is not just a store. It is a trap where time stands still, and the salespeople sharpen knives not for products, but for those who dare to go beyond their boundaries. I pocketed the receipt and hurried away. From then on, I only shop online. But sometimes, when the night was getting dark, I heard a voice from the kitchen. Thank you for shopping at Walmart. We'll meet again. And at that moment, I realized that the escape was not over. At that very moment, when the knives were raised in the air and the salespeople approached me with cold looks, something clicked inside me. Fear gave way to a wild determination. If they wanted to catch me, I would not give in without a fight. I rushed to one of the racks where the paring knives and kitchen utensils usually lay. My hands were shaking, but I quickly grabbed a couple of large knives and pressed them to myself, as if they were the only protection from impending death. A thought flashed through my head. A gun. Somewhere here, in the back room, the guards must have a gun. I didn't know how to handle it, but it was my only chance. As I made my way through the aisles, I heard the vendors begin to throw their wares around, their smiles gone, replaced by a vicious rage. They were shouting, quietly but clearly, as if they weren't people but voices from hell. Soon I noticed a door marked warehouse. I suddenly remembered. I had seen a guard there once. If he was there, he might have left a weapon. The door was locked, but I noticed a picklock next to it, a small metal tool that someone had forgotten. My heart pounding, I drove the picklock into the lock, and after long seconds, the door gave way with difficulty. Inside, there was darkness and the smell of old oil. There was a pistol on the table. I took it, and for the first time, my hand felt the weight of real protection. The sounds of chaos became closer. The vendors were breaking display cases. Their movements were swift and eerie. They noticed me. Their eyes sparkled with mad rage. I jumped out of the warehouse and opened fire. The bullets ricocheted off the shelves and mirrors, but a few hit their target. One of the salesmen collapsed, making a terrifying wheeze. But their numbers were growing, and I realized that there was little chance against such a number. Suddenly, the speakers came to life again. The voice now sounded menacing and threatening. You broke the rules, now we will not stop. Suddenly, a bald salesman with a knife emerged from the shadows. His gaze penetrated the soul, and his smile became so wide that it seemed it would swallow all the light around. I clutched the pistol, deciding to fight until the last shot, because there was simply no way out. I shot back as best I could. Shelves collapsed, lamps sparked, glass flew in all directions. Several salesmen were already lying on the floor, and although they were not bleeding, but something gray, thick, like machine oil, it still gave a feeling of victory. And then, a sound. Outside the store. A siren. The light flashed blue and red behind the display case. The police. Yes, I breathed out. Oh my God, they heard. Someone called. Soon the front door began to slowly open. I rushed to it, clutching the gun at the ready. 3 men in police uniforms approached from the parking lot. In their hands were batons, pistols, bulletproof vests, everything as required. I rushed towards them, shouting, Here, you have to help me. They have gone crazy. The salespeople, they are not people. The tallest of the policemen stepped forward, and then I saw his face, a smile, the same one, stretched, plastic, endless, lips stretched unnaturally wide, teeth white as porcelain, and eyes empty, mirrored. It was not me that was reflected in them. The store was reflected in them. Citizen, he said, and his voice was exactly the same as the salesman on the speakers. You have violated the loyalty policy. This is punishable by disposal. I backed away, raising my gun, but I could already hear footsteps behind me. The salesmen were getting closer again. I found myself sandwiched between them and the policeman. One of the officers took out something that did not look like handcuffs at all, more like surgical staples. "You are not our client," said the other. "You are a spoiled product." I opened fire. 2 bullets into the policeman's chest. He staggered, but did not fall. He simply looked at the hole in his uniform, as if it were a rain mark, and wiped it with his hand. Then he smiled again. "Attempted resistance. Protocol 13 activated." At that moment, the entire Walmart filled with sirens. Not police sirens, internal ones, as if the building had become alive and was now sounding the alarm. The lights went out. The emergency red light came on. All the doors slammed shut. I realized I was inside, and they were with me. The police, the shop assistants, the cameras. All of this was part of something bigger, something that couldn't be understood, something that wasn't of the human world. I took my last breath and ran to the cargo exit, clutching my pistol, and knowing that my chances of getting out of here alive were less than those of an expired yogurt on the bottom shelf. I ran through the back corridors of the store, shooting at locks, ducking from the deadly blows of knives and strange syringes that the shop assistants threw with such precision as if they had been practicing for years. There weren't many bullets left in the pistol. Adrenaline drove me forward when I ran into the back room, the old staff room where, fortunately, the radio on the wall still worked. I served once, not for long, but long enough to know the frequency of one bass no one else was supposed to know about. Just in case. I grabbed the microphone, my fingers shaking, the frequency beeping. "This is an emergency code 77 black," I croaked. "Velmart. Repeat, Velmart. This is not protocol. I am not alone. These are not human. Requesting immediate evacuation. There is a threat of capture." A pause, a static hiss. And then a voice, calm, stern, dry, acknowledged. "Confirm code 77-black. Taking action. Fire sweep." "Acknowledged," I whispered. "Everything is dead here." I hung up the radio, and at that moment, black SUVs stopped in front of the building. Not the police. This time, the FBI. I saw them through the window. They came out, sharp, in suits, with clipboards and smooth faces. They all had strangely similar ties and on their chests the same plastic badges. "Shit," I breathed. "Them too." One of them looked through the window. His eyes glowed red. And yes, he was smiling too. "Target unstable," he said into someone's earpiece. "Proceed with sterilization." That's when I realized. This wasn't just a fluke, not just a goddamn store. This was a chain, a system. Walmart was just a facade. There was more behind it. Maybe reality itself was fake. The FBI had entered the building through the main entrance, but now I was ready. From a hidden closet, I pulled out the briefcase I'd hidden here years ago when I worked here as a security guard. A plan for if everything went to hell. Inside was an old army machine gun, a tactical vest, some grenades, and a mask with the words "I'm real" written on it. I put on my gear. My eyes were pulsing with rage. I didn't care who they were. I wasn't their product. I wasn't part of the system. I was a glitch. The FBI entered as if they were going to a museum. Slowly, one by one. But as soon as the first one stepped over the line of refrigerators, I opened fire. "Contamination zone active," one shouted. "Client aggressive. Destroy." Bullets flew like locusts. The walls crumbled into plastic and sparks. And then the ceiling shook. A roar. The ground shook. Helicopters. Military. A black Chinook hovered over the building, and a voice roared through the speakers. "Client 113-77. We are here. Evacuation has begun. Hold the position." Fighters descended from the sky. Real ones. No smiles. No badges. And then the real carnage began. I shot back until my hands went numb. The bullets were running out. The grenades had already been used. The mask was cracking from the hits. The FBI was advancing. The sellers were coming from the flanks, and I had almost resigned myself to the fact that this was the end. And suddenly, a roar. The roof shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The helicopter hovered right above the building, and the military jumped out. Not guards, not special forces, real soldiers in black armor, with an emblem that I had only seen in classified files before. A red triangle with an eye crossed out. "Attention!" A voice boomed over the speaker. "All employees and visitors of Velmart lie face down on the floor. This is the final purge." They entered from both sides and began to methodically comb the premises. The FBI did not try to surrender. On the contrary, they pulled out knives and went into hand-to-hand combat, shouting something inhuman, more like the hiss of a cobra. "Confirmation received," said one of the commanders. "The facility is unofficial, abandoned for decades. Officially, does not exist. All entities inside are hostile. We are proceeding with the liquidation." I was standing by the refrigerator from which a liquid similar to tears was still dripping. The commander approached me. "You survived. It's rare. They usually don't leave witnesses." "Who are they?" I croaked. He looked at me through his dark glasses. "An old experiment. Consumer control. Personality suppression through the retail environment. Project Smile. It was shut down in the 90s. But one object remained. This Velmart. The system is autonomous, and it seems to have begun to reproduce." Behind him, soldiers were rolling out a huge charge. Not just a bomb. An entire container marked Dynamix X9/Memory Object Wipe. This is not ordinary dynamite. This is a bomb that does not just destroy, it erases the very existence of the target. "We can't let them go beyond the limits," the commander said. "They are adapting, already imitating the police, the FBI. The next stage is bank clerks, doctors, teachers. They want to be everywhere. Those who wanted to kill ordinary people were gone, erased, scattered in the wind like black flakes. They were gone. No looks, no smiles, just the residual smell of cheap air freshener and a charred tag melting in the coals. We're always here. Velmart.